My name is Pamela Hart, 28 years old. The message from my sister came at the worst possible time, halfway through a confidential investor briefing on our next generation quantum network. Emergency family dinner tonight. Dad's furious again. Says you're wasting your potential. 7. Huzru Sharp. Wear something respectable. I reread the text, exhaling slowly. The irony wasn't lost on me. While 12 of the world's most powerful investors waited for my presentation on technology that would redefine global security, my family was preparing PowerPoint slides about my career failure. "Everything all right, Ms. Hart?" asked Marcus, my CFO, glancing up from his notes. "Family drama," I said with a faint smile. "Let's finish the encryption demo." 6 hours later, I pulled my unassuming silver Honda Civic into the sweeping driveway of my parents' Georgian mansion. Between Dad's black Maserati and Mom's pristine Mercedes, my car looked like a misplaced servant. The house hadn't changed: white columns, glowing chandeliers, and the faint smell of expensive dissatisfaction. Maria, our longtime housekeeper, opened the door before I could knock. "Miss Pamela," she whispered, wringing her hands. "They've been preparing." PowerPoint slides, multiple versions. I smirked. Perfect. Inside, the dining room looked more like a corporate war room than a family gathering. Dad sat at the head of the table, posture rigid, eyes sharp. Mom, perfectly composed beside him, had a folder stacked with documents. Kate and her husband Bradley occupied one side, whispering nervously. Across from them, my brother Daniel and his wife Victoria scrolled through their phones, pretending not to notice me. "Pamela." Mom rose to kiss my cheek, the metallic clink of her Cartier bracelets punctuating the awkward silence. "You look comfortable." "I dress for my salary bracket," I said dryly, taking my seat at the opposite end, the designated hot seat. A projector hummed to life behind Dad. This was going to be worse than I'd imagined. "Let's get straight to it," he began, voice clipped, rehearsed. "Your behavior has become concerning." My behavior? I leaned back, folding my hands. "Or my career choices." Dad ignored the jab. "This so-called startup of yours, Quantum Solutions," I corrected softly, "has gone on long enough. 2 years of stealth mode, vague explanations, and no measurable progress. Meanwhile, your peers are advancing." Kate pounced right on cue. "Madison Green was just promoted to partner at McKinsey. You remember her? You two were neck and neck in college." Daniel added, "And Christopher Lee just became head of finance at Goldman. You're too smart to be drifting." Mom slid a folder across the table. "We've taken the liberty of compiling some opportunities. Harrison from Morgan Stanley said he'd happily interview you next week." I opened the folder, a neat collection of real jobs. For a moment I said nothing, just listened to the faint hum of the projector and the rhythmic clinking of Dad's pen against the table. "You've all gone to so much trouble," I murmured, feigning interest as I flipped through the pages. In truth, I was checking the time. 4 minutes until everything changed. Dad clicked the first slide. "We're doing this because we care. Your rent payments, your trust fund, your future. These are responsibilities, Pamela, not entitlements." "I pay my own rent," I said quietly. In that cramped apartment near the tech district, Victoria snorted. "Please, startups don't pay founders." If only they knew that the apartment was a front and that I owned the entire building along with the surrounding block. Dad's tone hardened. "As of today, your trust fund will be frozen until you demonstrate responsibility by taking a proper position." I almost laughed. The trust fund he was freezing earned less in a year than my company made in an hour. "Pamela," Mom said, her voice softer now, "we just want to understand. What does Quantum Solutions even do?" Everything I almost said, but before I could respond, the television mounted behind them flickered. The CNBC ticker began to scroll. Marcus's timing was impeccable. Breaking news: Wall Street Journal reveals identity of Quantum Solutions founder. My phone buzzed under the table. "Marcus, all systems go. Article live in 3, 2, 1. Dad raised his voice over the noise. "No more excuses, Pamela. No more support until—" He stopped mid-sentence. The TV anchor's voice cut through the room. "Breaking news tonight. Quantum Solutions. The secretive tech company revolutionizing quantum encryption and AI defense has revealed its founder, 28-year-old Pamela Hart." Silence. Every head turned toward the screen. My headshot illuminated in crisp HD above the headline. "The youngest self-made billionaire in history, Pamela Hart's Quantum Empire." Mom's glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the marble. Dad's PowerPoint clicker fell with a dull thud. Kate's phone dropped into her bowl of soup. "That's Daniel," stammered. "That's not possible. You drive a Honda." "Practical," I said, smiling faintly. "Why waste money on cars when you can fund the future?" Victoria's trembling fingers scrolled through her phone. The Pentagon just confirmed a $5 billion contract. Pamela. Dad's voice cracked. You built this." I stood slowly, the air heavy with disbelief. Built it, led it, and hid it for 2 years. The TV continued. "Quantum Solutions encryption systems are now standard for NASA, the Department of Defense, and 3 major global banks." Mom whispered almost to herself. "We thought you were lost." I said quietly. "Just not in the way you imagined." I reached into my bag and dropped 6 thick folders on the table. Non-disclosure agreements. If you'd like to know what Quantum Solutions really does, sign them. NDAs for family. Kate scoffed. "Especially for family," I said, meeting Dad's stunned gaze. "After all, you always taught me to protect my assets." The projector's slides kept shifting aimlessly, displaying outdated career graphs, now absurd next to the CNBC broadcast announcing my $12 billion valuation. "Oh, and Dad," I added, pausing at the doorway, about freezing my trust fund. "Don't bother. I donated it last year to fund scholarships for young engineers. I thought someone else could use the chance I no longer needed." I left them there motionless, surrounded by broken glass, flickering screens, and the ruins of their assumptions. Behind me, Mom called out softly, her voice trembling between pride and fear. "Pamela, what are you going to do now?" I looked back just once. "I'm going to finish what I started." The door closed. The faint sound of their phones, buzzing news alerts, missed calls, disbelief followed me down the marble steps. Outside, the night air felt sharp and electric, the city skyline pulsing with possibility. They had no idea. This wasn't revenge. This was only the beginning. The morning after the reveal felt surreal, not because of the headlines, but because of the silence. For once, my phone wasn't the only one buzzing uncontrollably. At 6:00 a.m., the world had decided to meet Pamela Hart, the Quantum Queen. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my real office, a glass-walled penthouse that overlooked the entire city. Beneath me, morning traffic glimmered like a bloodstream of light. On the central display screen, thousands of live data feeds, pulsed government requests, investor inquiries, collaboration offers. "Good morning, Ms. Hart," Marcus said, stepping in with 2 cups of espresso. He looked exhausted but exhilarated. "You broke the internet, literally. Our servers crashed for 3 minutes under traffic from 32 countries." "Not bad for a company no one believed existed yesterday," I murmured. He placed 1 espresso on my desk and opened his tablet. "So far, NASA wants an early briefing on Project Helios. The White House called twice. The president's science advisor is requesting a secure channel. And the family I asked not turning around." He hesitated. "Anderson Global's stock dropped 12% overnight. The media's roasting your father for failing to recognize the next big thing under his own roof. Kate's husband is trending on social media for his old post about startups being delusional." I smiled faintly. The internet has a long memory. Marcus scrolled through updates. "Also, your mother tried calling 16 times. Your father? None." Expected. I sipped the coffee, bitter and clean. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the faint hum of the quantum servers behind the glass. Marcus studied me. "You timed it perfectly, didn't you?" The reveal, the contracts, the market drop, all synchronized. I met his gaze. I learned from the best. My father's favorite lesson: leverage timing or become its victim. He nodded slowly. "Still, he's your father, Pamela. You sure you want to go through with this?" "I'm already through it," I said softly. "This isn't just about revenge. It's about evolution." My desk phone lit up incoming call, Kate Hart, the 15th since sunrise. I sighed and answered, "Good morning, Kate." Her voice burst through the speaker, half outrage, half hysteria. "The country club is losing its mind." Mrs. Worthington nearly fainted. Apparently her husband passed on investing in Quantum Solutions 2 years ago, and Mom's redecorating the living room with magazine covers of you, but she's crying at the same time. "That sounds about right," I interrupted gently. "She's saying you've made history, Pamela, that she always believed in you." "She didn't." Kate went quiet. "No, she didn't. None of us did." The sound of clinking glass came through the line, her nervous tick. "Dad hasn't said a word since last night. He's locked in his office. Pamela, he looks Small. I've never seen him like that. For a moment, I said nothing. I'd imagined this moment so many times, his shock, his silence, his realization. But hearing it didn't bring satisfaction. Just a strange ache. Kate, I said finally, tell him the market doesn't wait for pride to recover. She sighed. You really have changed. No, I said quietly. I've just stopped apologizing. Before she could reply, I ended the call. Marcus was watching me. You're still human, you know. You don't have to erase that. I'm not erasing it, I said. I'm channeling it. He raised an eyebrow. Channeling it into what? Legacy. I turned to the central display and brought up a new file, Operation Legacy. Lines of encrypted data acquisition reports and legal structures filled the screen. Through shell corporations, we currently hold 28% of Anderson Global shares, Marcus reported. We're on track to secure another 15 by next week. Make it 20, I said. That would give us control, he said carefully. Hostile takeover territory. Correction, I replied. Strategic succession. Marcus hesitated, then gave a small smile. You always did redefine the rules. I returned my gaze to the window, the city skyline reflecting in the glass, a live electric pulsing with everything I'd built. You know, Marcus said most people would celebrate today. You're a billionaire. The world finally knows who you are. I shook my head. They know what I am not who. Big difference. Then who are you? He asked quietly. I met his eyes. Someone my family taught to hide fire behind politeness. He gave a slow nod. Then I suppose the fire's out now. Not yet, I said, glancing at the family folder glowing in the corner of my desk. The reveal was only Act 1. The phone buzzed again. Another call, Mom this time. Marcus hesitated. You going to answer? Not yet. Pamela, he said softly, they're still your family. They were, I replied. But family is supposed to believe in you before the world does. I watched the live feed of Anderson Global's stock dip another 3 points. The screen split CNBC analysts debating how Anderson Global failed to see the quantum revolution coming. My father's photo flashed beside mine. A generational standoff in digital pixels. Schedule a board meeting, I said. For Quantum Solutions, no. My voice was steady. For Anderson Global. Marcus looked startled. You want to confront them publicly? I want to help, I said, my tone deceptively calm. They're hemorrhaging credibility. They'll need a savior. He smiled thinly. And you'll be the one offering salvation. Exactly. He walked toward the door but paused. Pamela, when you take Anderson Global, you'll have everything. The money, the power, the control. What happens after that? I stared at the quantum display pulsing behind him, endless data loops, light weaving like consciousness itself. After that, I said I start rebuilding what they broke. Marcus nodded and left, leaving me alone with the hum of the servers. Outside, clouds gathered heavy metallic as if the city itself anticipated the storm coming. I picked up my phone and finally played Mom's latest voicemail. Her voice was trembling. Pamela, I don't even know what to say. Your father, he won't admit it, but he's proud. We all are. We didn't see you. I hope you can forgive us. I let the message end, silence pressing in like gravity. Forgive them not yet. Maybe not ever. I turned back to the glowing quantum core, its pulse synchronized with my own heartbeat. Dad once told me I'd never survive in his world of business. He was right. I didn't survive it. I rewired it. And tomorrow he'd find out just how completely. 2 years ago, my father told me something I never forgot. In business, sentiment is weakness. Win clean or win dirty, but win. Back then, I thought he was just being cruel. Now I realize he was teaching me his rules, expecting I'd always be the pawn, never the player. But pawns under enough pressure evolve. The next week unfolded like a chessboard on fire. Every move I made sent tremors through the corporate world. Through Quantum Solutions' silent subsidiaries, we acquired company after company. Small tech firms, logistics partners, data security vendors, all with ties to Anderson Global. My father's empire was a web of outdated partnerships, all interconnected, all vulnerable. By the time he noticed, I already held control of 38% of his company. Marcus stepped into my office, face half lit by the glow of the holographic dashboard. You've officially triggered board panic. Anderson Global stock is in free fall. Investors are demanding answers. You're on every news channel. I didn't look up from my screen. Let them talk. Panic makes people careless. He hesitated. You're enjoying this, aren't you? No, I said, voice cool. I'm remembering. A flick of my hand brought up an archived video, one I hadn't watched in years. I was 24, sitting in the Anderson Global Conference Room. My father stood at the head of the table, surrounded by executives. I had just presented my prototype for quantum encryption, a system that would eliminate global cyber vulnerabilities. The future, I'd called it. He'd laughed. Cute idea, he'd said, dismissing me with a wave. But this isn't a university project, Pamela. You don't gamble with fantasy. The memory dissolved, replaced by my reflection in the dark screen. He gambled that I'd give up, I murmured. Marcus said nothing. I leaned back, crossing my arms. How many shares left to gain control? Roughly 12%. But there's a problem. He slid a report across my desk. Anderson's legal team just filed for a defensive merger. They're trying to lock you out. If they succeed, you'll lose your momentum. I smiled. Not if the board loses faith first. Marcus gave a slow grin. You want to turn his own allies against him. Not want, I said. Need. That afternoon, I met quietly with 3 Anderson Global board members at a private club in the city. The same men who'd once applauded my father's arrogance now leaned forward, desperate, sweating into their champagne. Ms. Hart 1 began. Anderson's leadership has grown, rigid. The markets don't trust him. If you're proposing, I'm not proposing, I interrupted gently. I'm offering salvation. They exchanged uneasy glances. I could almost see the moral struggle flickering behind their eyes. But in the end, money always won. By the time dessert arrived, they'd signed preliminary agreements to shift voting control to my holding company. That night, the city rain fell in sheets against my penthouse windows. Marcus was reviewing contracts while I stood in front of the window, the reflection of lightning illuminating the data screens behind me. Operation Legacy, he said. Tapping his tablet, is complete. 51% acquisition locked in. Once the documents are filed, you'll effectively control Anderson Global. I didn't react. The number didn't satisfy me. 51, I murmured. I want 53. Marcus gave a low chuckle. Because dominance requires margin. Because he taught me never to leave room for retaliation. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I knew that tone. It was him. I answered. Pamela. His voice was low, strained, unfamiliar. You've made quite a mess. I let silence linger. You think you can dismantle what I built, he continued. You're playing games with people's livelihoods, our family's name. I could hear the tremor he was trying to hide. Fear disguised as authority. I'm not dismantling it, I said evenly. I'm modernizing it. You refused to evolve, Dad. I didn't. A long pause. Then quietly. You've changed. No, I said. You never really saw me. That's the difference. Before he could respond, another alert popped up on my screen. Incoming file anonymous, leak, classified contract proposal. Marcus frowned. That's from one of our internal encrypted lines. Who? I opened it. Lines of text filled the screen. Anderson Global preparing to leak confidential government contract details linked to quantum solutions. Objective discredit Pamela Hart. My father's signature was embedded in the authorization. Marcus cursed under his breath. He's going nuclear. I stared at the document for a long moment, pulse steady. He's desperate. He knows he's losing control. Marcus met my eyes. What do you want to do? I took a slow breath. Prepare a response. What kind of response? The kind he taught me. At midnight, Anderson Global's internal servers experienced what the press later called a technical anomaly. In truth, it was precision surgical and non-destructive. My cybersecurity team exposed every vulnerability their outdated systems had without crossing the line into illegality. By dawn, Quantum Solutions' name was spotless. Anderson Global, however, looked like an antique collapsing under modern weight. When the media asked for comment, I simply said, "We believe transparency is the foundation of evolution." The subtext wasn't lost on anyone. By the end of the week, the stock market had spoken. Anderson Global's shares had plummeted 37%. Quantum Solutions had doubled. Marcus entered my office, dropping a file on my desk. You've done it. As of this morning, you officially own Anderson Global. But I didn't smile. Instead, I looked out at the skyline, the reflection of rain on glass, the electric hum of servers, the empire I'd built. I thought I'd feel victorious, I said quietly. And you don't. I feel unfinished. Marcus tilted his head. Then what's next? I turned toward him, a glint of cold fire in my eyes. Next, he learns what it feels like to sit across from someone who plays by his rules and wins. That night, as thunder rolled through the city, I sent a message to my father's assistant. Subject emergency board meeting. Tomorrow, 10:00 a.m. Message. Attendance mandatory. Media will be present. I hesitated before hitting send, then added one final line. Tell him to wear his best suit. It's going to be a historic day. The screen reflected my faint smile. He'd built a world that rewarded ruthlessness. Now I was going to show him what evolution looked like when his own daughter inherited his weapons. The sky wept that morning. Heavy rain streaked the glass walls of my Maybach as it pulled up to Anderson Global's headquarters, the same building where I once stood, trembling, clutching my prototype, waiting for my father's approval that never came. 2 years ago, I'd been told to park in the visitor's lot. Today, the guard nearly tripped over himself opening my door. "Ms. Hart, welcome back," he stammered, voice quivering. I handed him a tablet. "Install these new security protocols. My AI detected 17 vulnerabilities in your system overnight." His eyes widened. "Oh, of course, ma'am." As I stepped out, lightning flashed, illuminating the massive logo above the entrance. Anderson Global, my father's name in polished steel. Soon that name would carry mine beside it. Inside, chaos hummed beneath corporate polish. CNBC crews positioned cameras in the marble lobby. Assistants' whispered heels clicked like gunfire on tile. The stock ticker above reception was a Battlefield Anderson Global, down 14%, Quantum Solutions up 19%. The receptionist's voice cracked. "The board's waiting on the 50th floor, Ms. Hart." I nodded once. They're not waiting. They're witnessing. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. Reflections flickered on the mirrored walls. Mine calm, composed, almost surgical. I had practiced this expression in the dark for years. When the doors slid open, Kate was standing there, pale and anxious, in a designer suit that tried too hard to scream confidence. "Pamela," she said breathlessly, "please don't do this. The family's in crisis," I finished for her. "That's what happens when old systems refuse to evolve." She grabbed my arm. "Dad's not the enemy. He's terrified." "Good," I said. "That means he finally understands how I felt." I walked past her toward the boardroom. Behind me, her voice cracked. "You can't destroy your own family." I stopped, hand on the door handle. "I'm not destroying it. I'm redefining it." The boardroom was packed. 20 men and women in suits, faces tight with anticipation. Cameras buzzed quietly from the corner. The press had been allowed limited access. And there he was, my father, sitting at the head of the table, his once commanding posture now stiff defensive. His hair grayer, his confidence cracked. For a fleeting second, I almost pitied him. Almost. He rose slowly. "You're making a mistake, Pamela." "Then it'll be one more thing we have in common," I said evenly, setting my tablet on the table. "Let's begin." The chairman cleared his throat nervously. "This emergency session is to discuss the survival of Anderson Global," I interrupted, though I'm afraid that word survival might be optimistic. A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. My father's eyes narrowed. "You don't belong here," he said sharply. "You don't understand what this company represents." I tapped my screen. Instantly, every monitor in the room flickered to life with a live data visualization. Lines of red streamed across a world map. Anderson's outdated supply chains breached systems plummeting trust metrics. "I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that your cybersecurity is 15 years behind the standard. Your AI integration is a joke, and your market relevance is on life support." The chairman shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Hart." I raised a hand. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here to propose a solution." My father scoffed. "You mean a takeover?" "Call it what you want," I said. "I call it progress. Quantum Solutions is prepared to fully integrate with Anderson Global. We'll modernize your infrastructure, rebuild your credibility, and save your shareholders billions. And in return, I said you step aside." Gasps rippled through the room. My father's jaw clenched, but his voice was steady. "You've planned this all along. Every move, every leak, every headline. Just good strategy," I said softly. "You taught me that." He slammed a hand against the table. "You're using my lessons against me." I met his glare. Isn't that what every student does when the teacher refuses to evolve? The tension in the room thickened. Board members exchanged nervous glances. I advanced the presentation. The next slide displayed a financial chart. Anderson Global's collapse side by side with Quantum Solutions' meteoric rise. Then came the final number glowing in gold, 53.2%. A stunned silence followed. "As of this morning," I said, "Quantum Solutions owns a majority stake in Anderson Global. This isn't a proposal, it's a merger, effective immediately." The room erupted, papers flew. Board members shouted over one another. My father sat frozen. "You can't." "I can," I interrupted, and I did. The chairman's voice wavered. "Is this legal?" "Every document was filed at dawn," I replied. "The merger announcement will go public in 6 minutes." One of the board members checked his phone and went pale. It's already trending. I turned toward my father. His face was a storm-rage disbelief, pride, heartbreak, all colliding behind his eyes. "You've humiliated this family," he whispered. "For what? Revenge." "Recognition," I said quietly. "You built an empire out of arrogance. I'm building one out of evolution." He rose from his chair, voice trembling now. "You think you've won?" I leaned forward. "No, father. We win. Together. Or not at all. But this time I lead." His hands tightened on the back of his chair. "You always wanted to be me." "No," I said. "I wanted to be better." The cameras clicked like gunfire. The boardroom lights buzzed. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the glass like an applause only I could hear. I turned to the board. "Effective immediately, Anderson Global will merge under Quantum Solutions Technological Infrastructure. All departments will undergo integration within 60 days. The world is watching. Let's show them what evolution looks like." The chairman nodded weakly. Motion approved. My father sank into his chair, eyes distant. For the first time, he looked smaller than the empire he built. As I gathered my files, he spoke again softly this time. "When did you become so ruthless?" I paused at the door. "When you taught me that compassion has no place in business," I said. "You were wrong, but I had to learn that the hard way." I turned back once more, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "The difference between us, Dad, I'll still build something that lasts." The elevator doors slid shut behind me, cutting off the murmurs, the thunder, the ghosts. As we descended, Marcus handed me a document. "Congratulations, Ms. Hart. You're officially CEO of both corporations." I didn't answer. I just stared at the floor numbers blinking downward, 49, 38, 27, each one erasing a chapter of my past. When the doors opened onto the lobby, the flash of cameras blinded me. Reporters shouted questions. "Ms. Hart, how does it feel to own your father's company?" I gave them a measured smile. "It feels like the future finally caught up." And then I walked out into the rain, calm, unstoppable, untouchable. Tomorrow, the headlines would call it a historic merger. But to me, it was something else entirely. It was the sound of an old empire collapsing and a new one mine rising from the ruins. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy, like the world hadn't quite processed what had happened. 2 days after the merger, I stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the collar of a silk blouse. Tonight wasn't about power or contracts or television cameras. Tonight was about something far more dangerous: family. The restaurant was one of the most exclusive in the city, 12 tables only each served, beneath glass chandeliers shaped like falling stars. Most people waited months for a reservation. My family didn't have to. I owned the place. Marcus had handled everything: private dining room, press blackout. Even the exact playlist I'd requested, a slow piano piece that sounded like memory itself. When I arrived, they were already there. Dad in a dark suit that seemed to hang heavier on his shoulders now. Mom, her elegance strained by nerves. Kate and Daniel trying and failing to act natural. It could have been any family dinner, if not for the unspoken weight pressing down on every silver fork, every careful breath. Mom stood first. "Pamela." Her voice cracked slightly as she said my name. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," I said, offering a small smile. "I thought we could use a little civility after the week we've had." No one spoke as the waiter poured the wine. The clinking of crystal sounded like echoes in a mausoleum. Finally, Dad broke the silence. So he said, clearing his throat, "What happens now? Am I supposed to congratulate you?" I met his eyes. That would be a start. His jaw flexed. "You humiliated me, Pamela. Publicly." I leaned forward slightly, voice steady but low. "You did that to yourself when you refused to listen. When you dismissed my ideas, my work, my worth. You told me dreams were weakness. You built an empire on fear. I just built one on what you taught me without the fear." He looked away, fingers tightening around his wine glass. Mom interjected gently. "Your father only wanted the best for you." "The best," I echoed, "or control?" Silence. Across the table, Kate shifted uncomfortably. "You don't know what it was like for us, Eve. We weren't part of your secret empire. We just—" I cut her off softly. "You were part of the chorus, Kate. Every time you laughed at my ideas, every time you called me delusional, you were in perfect harmony with him." Daniel spoke up, eyes defensive. "You can't blame us for not knowing what you were doing." I turned to him calm. "No, but I can blame you for not caring to find out." The room was so quiet, I could hear the rain starting again outside, soft, hesitant. Mom reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly. "Pamela, we're proud of you. Truly. We didn't understand what you were building." I looked at her hand for a moment, then covered it with mine. For the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes, fear of losing me for good. I know, I said softly, and maybe I didn't make it easy to understand. Her voice broke. You shut us out. I had to, I whispered. If I'd told you, you would have tried to stop me. Dad exhaled sharply, sitting back. So that's it then. You've taken everything. You've won. Dad, I said quietly, this wasn't about winning. It was about being seen. He met my gaze hard, searching and for a fleeting moment human. You think I don't see you now, he said. I do. But I also see what it's cost you. His words hit deeper than I expected. For the first time in years, his tone wasn't commanding. It was honest. I swallowed. Everything worth building costs something. Even family, he asked. That question hung in the air like smoke. The waiter entered to serve the next course, oblivious to the battlefield he was walking through. No one touched their plates. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Maybe this is our second chance. Maybe we stop fighting and start understanding. I wanted to believe her, but the hurt wasn't a wound you could just bandage with good intentions. Maybe I said finally understanding starts when we stop pretending we're perfect. Kate exhaled shakily. You're serious about rebuilding the company, aren't you? Completely, I said. But this time we do it differently. Transparent, inclusive, modern. Dad gave a bitter laugh. You'll find the world isn't as simple as your algorithms. I smiled faintly. No, but my algorithms never needed approval to function. For a long time, we just sat there, the family that had built walls out of pride, finally sitting in the rubble together. Then Dad put his glass down, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. You remind me of myself, he said. I just wish I'd realized it before I forced you to prove it. Something in me softened. For the first time, I saw the man beneath the armor, the one who'd built everything out of fear of failure. I nodded. Maybe we both learned too late. He gave a weary smile. Maybe not too late. You've built something incredible, Pamela. I see that now. The piano track changed slow, melancholic. Mom reached for my hand again. Kate and Daniel stayed quiet. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel hostile. It felt fragile, real. When the waiter refilled my glass, I looked around the table. These people who had doubted me, dismissed me, loved me in their own broken ways, and said softly, maybe it's time we all start acting like family again. No one argued. Outside, lightning flashed faintly, but the rain had softened to a whisper, washing the glass clean. For the first time, I didn't see power or victory when I looked at them. I saw the cost of both. And as Dad lifted his glass in a hesitant toast, hands shaking, eyes wet, I lifted mine too. To family, he said. To evolution, I replied. And for a brief, fleeting moment, the two meant the same thing. The city was still asleep when I arrived at the top floor of the new Anderson Quantum Tower. Sunlight was just beginning to pierce through the morning haze, spilling gold across the skyline. From up here, the world looked both infinite and small, like a circuit board of possibilities waiting to be rewritten. I stood by the glass wall, coffee in hand, watching the faint reflection of my own face overlap with the glowing horizon. So much had changed in just a week. CNBC called it the merger of the century. Forbes' headline read, Pamela Hart, the woman who bought her past. And yet standing here, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. Behind me, the hum of quantum processors filled the air, a constant living heartbeat. Each unit carried enough power to simulate realities we once thought impossible. It was beautiful and terrifying. Marcus entered holding a folder. His tie was crooked, his eyes tired but gleaming. Morning, Ms. Hart, or should I say, Madam CEO of the world. Too early for flattery, I said, smiling faintly. What's the damage report? He set the folder on my desk. No damage. Record-breaking, actually. Both Quantum and Anderson stocks are up 20%. The mergers stabilized the markets. The Pentagon confirmed expansion of Project Helios, and NASA wants exclusive rights for orbital encryption. I nodded, skimming the pages without really reading them. And the family, he hesitated. Your father resigned officially this morning. The press release was graceful. He called you the most visionary leader of her generation. I froze for a moment. He actually said that. Marcus smiled. Word for word. He even thanked you for saving the company legacy. I turned back towards the window. The sunlight had strengthened, now washing the office in pale gold. Somewhere inside me, the smallest knot of tension loosened. What about my mother? I asked. She's been calling the foundation. Wants to start a scholarship program in your name. I exhaled softly, a trace of laughter escaping. She never does anything halfway. Marcus tilted his head. So what now? You've got everything. Control power, the family's respect. What's next? I placed the folder down carefully. Now I build something that matters. He raised a brow. Haven't you already? Not yet, I said quietly. Quantum solutions change technology, but it didn't change people. I want to start there. He leaned against the desk. You're thinking legacy. Redefining it, I corrected. I spent years proving I could beat the system. Maybe it's time to design one worth inheriting. He nodded slowly. You really are your father's daughter. I smiled, not bitterly this time, but with something close to peace. No, I'm my own creation. Later that morning, I walked through the newly combined R&D floor. Engineers greeted me with respect that still felt foreign. Holographic projections floated mid-air quantum architecture models, AI consciousness studies, prototype simulations for energy transfer. At the center stood the crown jewel Project Helios, a quantum network capable of linking human cognition to machine learning in real time. The future bright and dangerous. As I watched the data dance in light, I remembered the last thing my father said at dinner. You remind me of myself. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. And I wondered, would I ever see that same truth reflected in someone else? Someone who would rise after me, not because of me, but beyond me. I reached for a tablet and opened a new document, Heart Initiative Global Innovation Fellowship. Mission statement: to fund young inventors who see what others dismiss, to give them what I never had belief. For a moment, I just stared at the words, the cursor blinking at the end of the sentence. Then I pressed save. Legacy wasn't just about power. It was about permission, the permission to dream without fear. That evening, I returned to the tower's rooftop terrace. The city shimmered below, alive with motion and noise. From this height, I could see the Hart family estate in the distance, a pale shape among the trees. My phone buzzed. A message from Dad. Dinner next week, just us. No PowerPoints. I'll bring the wine. I smiled, shaking my head. For the first time in years, the message didn't sting. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not apologies, but effort. Not perfection, but presence. I typed back a single reply. Only if I get to pick the restaurant. Deal, he wrote. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked at the horizon. The servers inside the tower hummed louder. Hundreds of quantum cores, calculating future possibilities. Billions of probabilities twisting into existence. And among them somewhere was a version of me who'd never stopped chasing approval. But she wasn't the one standing here now. I was no longer the daughter they doubted. I was the architect of what came next. The city lights reflected on the glass, forming twin constellations, one above one, below both, pulsing in perfect rhythm. For the first time, I didn't see two worlds, just one. And in that silent merging of sky and steel, I finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't victory. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't and still choosing grace.